When you think of October, what do you think of? You think of autumn and autumn colors and pumpkins and Halloween. Do you know that a pumpkin is a winter squash? And I'm going to show you a recipe using winter squash and healthy vegetables that you can make with the pumpkins that you buy from the farmer. These are heirloom pumpkins grown especially for food and not just for jack-o'-lanterns. And look how beautiful they are. You put them on your front steps for Halloween, and then after Halloween you can make my recipe. Here we go. So I said earlier that pumpkin is a kind of winter squash. You want to make sure to buy something like sugar pumpkin or red curry pumpkin, because these kinds of pumpkins are the edible ones. The ones that are cheap are really for jack-o'-lanterns. The best thing to do with a jack-o'-lantern after Halloween is to give it to the zoo. Give it to the animals. It's food for the giraffes. Now this is also a winter squash, but it's called butternut. And when you buy canned pumpkin for your pumpkin pie, it's really butternut squash. Butternut squash is a really good tasting winter squash. And I've got a very sharp big knife, and I'm cutting it like this, trying desperately to keep my hand out of the way. This is not something that's good for a 3-year-old because the squashes are pretty hard, okay? Now there's a long part and a round part. The round part is the one with seeds, so I'm going to cut it in half. Cut it in half, take out the seeds with a spoon, and then I'm going to peel it with a sharp knife. When you peel squash with a sharp knife, always cut away from you, not towards you. Look what I have here. I have a peeled and seeded butternut squash, and I'm cutting it as carefully as I can onto a wooden board so as not to cut myself. And this is basically hard as a rock. And now I'm going to take all my butternut squash and put it onto a baking pan. I'm putting it onto a baking pan. And your 2 secret ingredients whenever you're cooking a vegetable you don't know anything about is always olive oil and sea salt. And I'm putting it in a 400 oven for about 30 or 40 minutes until it's soft when you pierce it with a fork. Into the oven, I'm putting my squash, and here's what it looks like when you take it out of the oven. What I do is I always turn it about halfway through the cooking, because what makes the squash taste good is having a slightly golden color on the bottom. Look at this. This is kind of, you see that? That little bit of brown is caramelized sugar from the pumpkin that's going to make this whole dish taste good. Now let's look what I'm doing here. This is my trick. This is boiling salted water, and I half cook clean spinach in it, and then I take it out with tongs and dry it on paper towels. Okay? So you can always make spinach like this, like a week ahead or 3 or 4 days ahead. It's simply boiled in salted water and cooked to half wilted. Next, I'm going to cut up some tomatoes. Tomatoes are really interesting. At this time of year in California, we get these tomatoes that are called early girl. These are tomatoes that are a kind of tomato that grows where there's not a whole lot of sun, and they're called dry harvested. So you do not want to buy big, pale tomatoes for cooking. You want to buy small, red tomatoes because they have an intense flavor. So if you don't have early girls where you live, it's okay. But I'm just going to take these tomatoes and cut them in half like this, down and forward onto a board. And that's my early girl tomatoes to go on top of my spinach, on top of my winter squash, and on top of covered with Gruyere cheese. So we have our squash, our spinach, our tomatoes, and this is grated Gruyere cheese. Gruyere cheese can be made in a factory in Switzerland or can be made by hand. And the hand one that you grate yourself on a large box grater is the best. Gruyere is the real Swiss cheese, in my opinion. Okay, so look at this. Doesn't this look good? I can use my hands. I've got, the food is cool now, so I'm going to make a layer first of squash. And make sure it always has salt and olive oil and on it. What do you do with the leftover squash? This squash, roasted squash like this, could be put into pasta, penne pasta with red Russian kale and pecorino cheese. It could be made into risotto. You can put it in polenta. So roasting pumpkin and/or squash, you can use it for many different uses. This is a layer of spinach, and we could make this a little bit thinner than it is. So we're just making a thin layer of spinach on top of our squash. And green vegetables and yellow vegetables are the antioxidant vegetables that are good for you. Look at this. Oh my God, that looks so good. And now I'm going to put on my little tomatoes. And I always make sure to put just a little bit of salt on the tomatoes. Okay, so that I have plenty of food here. So these are the tomatoes without their little green stems. And I'm just covering this up. This will go into a 350 oven for about 40 minutes. And then when the tomatoes are melted and the cheese is melted, you have a wonderful dish. Okay. Look at that. Small, red, ripe, dry harvested tomatoes from the farmer's market. And imported Gruyere cheese from Switzerland. If you want to use Monterey Jack that comes from California, fine. If you want to use mozzarella that comes from Italy or Southern California, fine. Don't worry about what kind of cheese it is. The Gruyere is just a little bit saltier than the mozzarella. And also, at the winter time, if you don't have little red tomatoes, you could make this dish with marinara sauce. This is my gratin of autumn vegetables with Gruyere cheese. I'm going to put it in a 350 oven for 30 or 40 minutes and serve it maybe with grilled fish, grilled chicken or grilled meats, and maybe as a Sunday night supper. Oh my God, look how delicious this is. A gratin of tomatoes, spinach, winter squash with Gruyere cheese. It can bake in the oven for a few more minutes, and I'm going to take it now and let it rest. And remember, when you buy specialty pumpkins like these from the farmers or at your supermarket, to roast them. Keep them as decoration as long as you want. Roast them and mix them with spinach, tomatoes, and cheese, and you'll have a wonderful Sunday night supper dish. My name is Mary Risley. I run a cooking school in San Francisco called Tante Marie's Cooking School, and I'm very proud of my YouTube videos and my recipes on tantemarie.com. Have a wonderful holiday season.